I am delighted to introduce this year's alumni collection speaker, the Reverend Paula Lawrence-Wehmiller from the class of '67. An educator, author, ordained Episcopal priest, and a consultant to communities of faith, learning, and service, Paula in many ways embodies the spirit and the mission of the college. I had the pleasure of meeting Paula and her husband, John Wehmiller, class of '66, shortly after I arrived at the college, and we have become dear friends. She has been a tremendous support and a source of profound wisdom to me. And I am so pleased that she agreed to serve as this year's collection speaker, even though she is recovering from a broken ankle, an injury I understand she sustained while sliding into third base. Paula received her BA from Swarthmore in 1967 and her MS from Bank Street College of Education in 1971. She began her teaching career in 1969, and she had a long and distinguished career in education, including serving as an elementary school principal, before her, quote, inclination to give the bread away led her to her ordination as a priest in the Episcopal Church in 1998. She now combines her teaching and priestly vocations to focus on consulting, speaking, writing, offering retreats, conferences, and workshops. Additionally, she supports and nourishes the work of educators, clergy, community leaders, and the people they serve. In 2007, Paula received the Ecumenical Award in recognition of dialogue and bridge building from the Benedictine Women of Madison, Wisconsin, an ecumenical monastic community on whose founding board she served for 9 years. Paula also served on the advisory board of Different and the Same, Helping Children Identify and Prevent Prejudice, a video project of Family Communications, Inc., the parent company of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And she authored a chapter in the book Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Children, Television, and Mr. Rogers. She is also the author of a gorgeous book called A Gathering of Gifts, which speaks to her experiences as an educator, spouse, parent, priest, and member of a remarkable African-American family whose origins she yearns to trace beyond the period of enslavement to the homeland. Paula is a highly sought-after keynote speaker, and she has served as a visiting lecturer and scholar in residence in school communities in every region of the country. Embracing the community's gifts of diversity and making inclusiveness a way of life is at the heart of her work. Please join me in welcoming the Reverend Paula Lawrence-Wehmiller.
Thank you, You are here by my side walking. There's a voice within us talking. There's a word that needs a saying. Carry it on, carry it on. Carry it on, we're gonna carry it on. When you can't go on any longer, take the hand of your sisters and brothers. Every victory's gonna bring us another. Carry it on, carry it on. Carry it on, we're gonna carry it on. In my growing up family, telling stories is how we speak. Parable is our mother tongue. It always surprises me when someone refers to me as a storyteller. Separating stories from who I am would be like separating breathing from the way I live my life. The stories that want telling are my way of knowing where I have come from, whose shoulders I am standing on, who I am becoming, and who I am called to be. We were 3 generations around our family table. Our grandparents had raised our mother in Mississippi, where grandfather was priest in charge of an Episcopal church in Vicksburg, and grandmother taught school children with a fierceness born of her belief that there was no such thing as a child who could not learn. The family table, groaning with food, shouldered the complaints we 3 children brought home from school, sustained the grooves we wore in the family arguments, and had its own unspoken rules, which grandmother often felt called upon to amend. "Would you eat that way if you were at the president's house for dinner?" grandmother would ask, spotting an elbow on the table or a bite of something sneaked in before grace. There was no right answer to her question. A yes meant that you were willing to embarrass her in front of the President of the United States by demonstrating that she had not raised her grandchildren right. A no meant that you knew to be polite to the president, but thought it was okay to be polite to her. Grandmother's question was not a question at all. Having raised their daughter in the Deep South, our grandparents knew all too well how important it was for their colored grandchildren to learn to respect their elders, so we wouldn't one day slip up and offend a white person. Learning our manners at the table would become a lifelong lesson in survival. When seconds and thirds have gone around, who's counting, my mother always says, our dad, the family griot, presiding from his end of the table, removes his glasses and raises his ample eyebrows, a sign of a parable coming forward from the pictures and sounds and feelings stored in his soul. Great-grandfather Job Childs Lawrence was the son of a black slave and a white master. When his father had gambled away everything he had, Job Childs was called to him and told that he and his mother would be sold to his father's brother. The father gave Job a silver dollar. Job Childs threw the silver dollar in the dirt and said, "I don't want your silver dollar, and I don't want your name." And so the legend goes, he turned and left and took the name Lawrence after people he knew and admired. And then the story ends with a refrain that was to be the refrain of many family stories to come. He knew who he was, and he was blessed. The legend in the community and far beyond was that the Lawrences were always at table, with a place set for Elijah, and Elijah almost always showed up. There was always, as the spiritual says, plenty good room to sit down and break bread with us. It was at the family table that our parents first began to discuss plans for us to travel south to visit family and friends where Mom and Dad had grown up. With the seats folded down in the back of our brand new stick-on-the-column 1954 Ford Country sedan station wagon, my sister and brother and I have the ridges on the floor carefully divided by 3. When fermenting road boredom occasionally erupts over sibling toes trespassing fiercely guarded territories, our father, without a word, pulls the car to the side of the road and cuts the engine off. We sit there in the long and awful silence, well past the time when we've gotten the point that the trip is not going to go on until we stop fussing. This was one of our traveling rituals. Another of our rituals is stopping to eat our meals in restaurants. We sit down in the restaurant in the same pattern as we sit at home, and when the meal commences, we teach a new table the family stories. But we haven't gotten much farther south than Delaware when Dad, as always, pulls up to the restaurant, but this time he goes in alone. He comes out with a look on his face that frightens me. He gets back in the car and starts up the engine, but before we drive on, our parents explain that this is a part of our country where brown-skinned people are not welcome at table. Now the picture I have of the table would forever include one in which all the white people are seated for an elegant meal, and all the brown people are standing invisibly aside, silently waiting table. After they are done serving the white people, the brown people will eat dinner in the kitchen or just wait until they get back home. I felt then a kind of hunger that comes to me still when I'm in a place where it's not safe to be myself, where I have to unremember who I am in order to survive. And though it is a painful feeling, I will one day look back on this moment and know that it is the seed of food for fueling what would become my life's vocation, a vocation of breaking the Jim Crow rules about who gets to eat at the table. Now, as we are driving further on down the road, my brother and sister and I are huddled more closely, no real or imaginary borders between us. Just then, through the din of the newly started up engine and the sound of the tires on the road, I hear our Father's voice calling us out of our weariness and fear and loss of direction. He is speaking quietly but firmly the refrain from the family table. We know who we are, and we are blessed. The Hebrew word for sojourner, ger, means stranger within the gates. An ancient Hebrew law required that households welcome all sojourners and protect them from harm. And so it was that the lessons of deep hospitality, learned at the family table and practiced on the road, got safely tucked into my lunchbox when it was my turn to become a sojourner in school. At school, I am a stranger within the gates of Dick and Jane and Sally and Spot and Puff's neighborhood. Don't tell me you didn't read the same book. Where everyone in the picture is the same color, the color the Crayola company calls flesh. I am skeptical of the kingdom illustrated in school books where there are no children who look like us, no grandmothers who teach, no mothers who are doctors like our mother, nor fathers who like to make their children's lunches and sing spirituals to their children as they fall asleep in his arms. In school, I use up much of my creative energy adapting to the relentless string of discontinuities I face between who I am on the inside and the person I need to be on the outside in order to fit in at school. In his 1963 talk to teachers, James Baldwin writes that a Negro child in school understands that if they ask you if it is raining, you don't look up at the sky, you look into the teacher's face. Knowing this instinctively, I quickly learned how to read my teachers, parroting back the answer that they expect. At school, I have to unremember who I am, what my story is, and pass for someone else. Sadly, like most children, I'm very good at it. Advocating for us at school meant that Mom and Dad were fierce critics of the school system at a time when we regularly had to duck under our desks during air raid drills. They stood up for my brother and sister, who stood up to a bullying so-called citizenship education teacher who had tried to push me under my desk when I resisted first his orders and then his verbal threats. And they hated the way we were deprived of learning about our African American heritage in school, though that was just one more cause to tell our story at home. When I was called in with my parents by the small-minded 8th grade guidance counselor who announced to us that I was not college material and that he was putting me in the non-academic track, our parents threw body and soul into harm's way, small-minded, bullying people in school and in the world were their enemies. And in our house, the unspoken translation of the gospel, love your enemy, is teach your enemy. My brother is a professor of U.S. constitutional law, and my sister is a professor of sociology. Yet it was only when we were all adults with children of our own that my mother told us that all the Lawrence children had the experience of being told that we were not college material. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that we all have vocations, teaching people to teach their enemies. The story we were learning at school was played against the story we learned as our family went on peace marches and civil rights marches, and people in the movement filled our home and sat at our table with their stories, which was our story. We were not to be deprived of these treasures just because school was not ready to take care of them yet. It is the fall of 1963. With well-worn marching shoes on my feet, I sojourned through the gates of Swarthmore College, where my sister, Sarah, is a year ahead of me. Together, we make up 2 out of a handful of Black students, Negro, we said then, in the whole college, and there are no Black professors. The good brown people from nearby Chester who take care of the grounds and who clean the dorm rooms are our people. Maids, the college calls them, and white students and staff alike call them by their first names. Make yourself known, our Southern-raised parents had told us before leaving home, and these are the people who see to it that we do just that. They are Ms. Marion, Miss Cornelia, and Mr. Randy to us, and letting us know unabashedly that we are carrying on for our race. They tell us often how proud they are of us. They also assign themselves to pick up where our grandmother's lessons in table manners left off. Miss Paula, they call out, spotting me sashaying down the path to the dining hall with my black watch plaid skirt barely covering my knees. That skirt is too short for you, girl. You need to go back and find something decent to wear for dinner. We are grateful for our brown-skinned mentors, and the love and respect is mutual. But their place at the college is a nagging reminder of the vision I had as an 8-year-old, where brown people are standing invisibly aside, serving white people a fancy meal, but won't get to eat until they get back home. God knows that when the Lawrence siblings are together, we will always find ways to live our stories. At Swarthmore, we live them as we dress in coats of many colors. We live them in our voices as we sing alto and soprano side by side in chorus and singers. Our brother Chuck is a junior at Haverford, where he is one of 2 Black students in his class, and he frequently finds his way over Route 320 to the Swarthmore campus, where the three of us sit together in a booth in Sharpless well past when everyone else has left for the library, telling three different versions of the same story, joining in on the punchline in unison. We don't pay any mind to the chorus of blank stares around us as we go from sorrow to raucous laughter in a single sentence. Anyway, Sister Sarah says, that's just a sign of how evolved we are. The stories we learned and lived at home sustain us at this place that does not yet have the capacity to acknowledge the struggle. Having my brother and sister close by is a comforting reminder that our parents raised us to know both the strength and the joy in the struggle. A gift we brought with us when we came to college, and that we hope to pass on to Black students who come after us as we shake the garnet dust off of our sandals and go on our way. A few years ago, I was going through some old papers, and I came across a letter written the summer before my freshman year by Swarthmore's Dean of Women. The letter was not to me, but apparently at some point it had been passed along to me by someone who had been on the receiving end of one of the letters the dean wrote to incoming white female freshmen, asking if they would be willing to be part of an experiment where the college was assigning Negro girls to room with white girls. Looking through your admission folder, the dean wrote, we thought that you would be a good candidate, but we also want you to have a joyful freshman year, so don't feel obligated to say yes. I look forward to hearing from you. Experiment? That's how they saw me? Maybe I...
That's you. If you wanted to room with them.
Experiment? That's how they saw me? Maybe I had been told about the letter but had forgotten because it was too painful. Or maybe I never knew. But reading it 50 plus years later, I am both relieved to have an explanation for the feeling that had shadowed me for 4 years at Swarthmore, that it was not safe to be myself in this place, and shocked and pained to discover the truth. And even as I say that, the hunger I felt as an 8-year-old in a sacramental moment by the side of a southern road comes back to me, that deep hunger that by now I know is not mine after all, but the whole world's hungering for justice and dignity for all. It is winter of 2020, and our President Val Smith has dedicated the academic year to celebrating Black excellence at Swarthmore, honoring the rich history of contributions of Black Swarthmorians. In late February, I received an email from Swarthmore Professor of Chemistry, Catherine Riley, inviting me to be interviewed and filmed by current Black student athletes about my experience of being a Black athlete at Swarthmore. I can't recall anyone ever expressing curiosity about what it was like for me to be a token Black student at Swarthmore. So I am surprised by the invitation, and even more surprised that someone had discovered that I played 3 varsity sports here. Reluctant at first, I decided to say yes, and they are kind enough to send me directions to the Black Cultural Center, which tickles me because before it was the BCC, it was my senior dorm. When I arrive, I am greeted enthusiastically by Professor Riley, who I will soon discover was a star softball pitcher as a Swarthmore undergraduate, and 3 tall, beautiful Black volleyball players. We go on a quick detour so I can show them my senior dorm room before they settle me in front of the camera for the interview. After they ask a few prepared questions that reveal their own challenging experiences of being Black athletes at Swarthmore, the conversation turns to their curiosity about what it was like back in the day. What was it like before Title IX, they want to know. We didn't know it was before Title IX, I tell them. Were you close to your Black roommates, they ask. I didn't have any Black roommates, I answer. After much animated conversation, they ask if I have a salient memory from my time as a student athlete at Swarthmore. I tell them that I loved piling onto the bus and riding to away games. I loved how it felt to be on the field, running strong and fast and free. It was the most myself I ever felt at Swarthmore. As our time is coming to an end, there is something I want to tell them. You know, I say, I know that things are challenging here. I know that racism still camps on the threshold of Swarthmore's best intentions to be inclusive, just as it does everywhere. And bless you for speaking out about these things and working for change. I just want you to know that sometimes I'm down in the Ville at the co-op, picking up something for supper, when I see you all walking in after practice, gorgeous and athletic in your practice uniforms, one or two of you with ice packs on your shoulder or on your hips. You are wandering through the aisles, picking up snacks and drinks and enjoying each other's company. Here's what I am thinking when I see you, and here is what I want you to know. You are my reparations. Now we are all weeping. This, I now know, is Swarthmore's gift to me, a big old angel in disguise, calling me back to the work of rototilling the long frozen and sometimes unforgiving ground of my past at Swarthmore, and discovering deep in the rich and fertile soil the strong, healthy roots of my vocation as an educator and priest, a life partner to my husband, John, and a mother to our beautiful sons. It is my very own Magnificat, sung in the words of Black activist, poet, and priest, Paula Murray. When I consider how this frozen field holds in its harrowed breast a seed which shall in time yield bread for hungering mouths, I am at peace. Earth has her need of rain, and I of tears. Remember our grandmother's rule about eating with the president? Well, when our family visited the homes of extended family or friends, grandmother had a rule for that too. As we children piled out of the car and scrambled up the steps to the front door, she would say, remember, you're the guest. Now, the mystery of that rule was that it got turned upside down when company came to our house. As soon as there was a knock at the door, grandmother would say, remember, they're the guest. While her rule seemed unfair to me as a child, it turned out that grandmother was onto something I did not learn until I studied ancient Greek in seminary, that xenos, the word that means stranger in Greek, means both guest and host. Theologian Ana Maria Pineda writes, quote, this one word, xenos, signals the essential mutuality that is at the heart of hospitality. No one is strange except in relation to someone else. We make one another guests and hosts by the way we treat each other. Take the English word xenophobia, fear of the stranger, turn it around and substitute the Greek word for fear with the word for love, and you get the Greek word for hospitality, philoxenia, love of the guest or love of the whole atmosphere of hospitality. In the college community, we are all both guests and hosts, standing on the holy ground of hospitality, listening to each other's stories with curiosity and compassion, becoming fluent in the language of meaning making, and coming home to ourselves where parable, the language of the heart, is our mother tongue. As welcoming hosts and welcoming guests and welcomed guests, may we hear in each other's story the refrain of unconditional love. You know who you are, and you are blessed.